Welcome back to the Go in the Match podcast. Today I'm joined by the voice of Anfield, George Sephton. George has been in the announcement box at Anfield since 1971, and it's safe to say he's the most well-known voice at Anfield. George, thanks for giving up your time today, mate, and thanks for coming on the podcast.
My pleasure. Best known voice in world football, if you don't mind. That's
Definitely.
The calling card, yeah. The least known face as well.
Okay, so I want you to take us back to your childhood and following Liverpool. Where were you born and how did your love for Liverpool Football Club begin?
I was born in Liverpool, strangely late, in the same hospital that all my kids were born in, Oxford Street Maternity Hospital.
Oh, right.
But I was brought up as a Red, and my dad had a trial for Liverpool in 1923.
Oh, wow.
Exactly. My dad was, I was going to say strange. That's not fair. He was set in his ways.
Yeah.
In our house, I was an only child. In our house, it was just very old-fashioned. He went out to work and went to the match on the Saturday.
Yeah.
My mum stayed at home and did the housework, and I sat at home and did my schoolwork. He only ever took me to the game once, and that was quite late on, not long before he stopped going.
Yeah.
But he'd go to the match every Saturday. I never think about taking me. I don't know why. But the first game I actually went to at Anfield was January 1960.
Okay.
A month after Shanks came along. We played Manchester United in the Cup. And I went with a couple of my friends from school. That was quite an experience. It was a whole new world for me. I mean, I went up to Anfield after school to queue up and get tickets. I know when I got home, I think it was not long after my mother had actually died. I was living with my auntie and uncle down the road. And when I came through the door, I think they thought I'd been in a car accident or something. There was just absolutely, battered from pushing and shoving down this queue.
Yeah.
And accidentally got kicked by a police horse as well. Didn't help. Well, that was quite an experience. But United then were the Busby Babes, the great United team, just recovering from the Munich crash. They beat us 3-1 in the Cup, which was a bit of a disappointment. It was to be expected. But after that, I started going on a regular basis to Anfield. And obviously, I've been at it ever since, one way or the other.
So is there anything from your first game that you can remember? So I think I've touched on every episode that everyone has that moment going up the stairs and seeing the pitch for the first time. And
it's
that's
weird.
what I do with you now.
Even to this day, I say to people, you can't talk about Anfield unless you've actually been.
Yeah.
You watch it on the TV, you hear the noise, you see the colour, but until you actually get inside and feel the atmosphere of the place, it's got a special presence. It's just impossible to describe. You've got to go. And I remember going in, what they all say, the smell of the hot dogs.
Yeah.
And the tea, the half-time cup of tea and a pork pie you used to have religiously there every week. I wonder now any of us survived that one, to tell you. What was in the pies, I dread to think. And I remember there was an old joke about, somebody asked the guy at the counter what was in the meat pie, and this guy glared at him and said, meat. As far as it went.
Oh, God.
But as I say, the crowd, the size of the crowd, you can't imagine the noise until you get inside and hear it for yourself.
Yeah.
And my first game, actually, I was standing in the old paddock, which was standing earlier in front of the old main stand. And it was only after that I started going on the Cop regularly. I know my mate and I used to go, get in early and get our spec with our backs to the crush barrier halfway up in the centre of the Cop. And if you didn't get there early, if you got there late, sometimes later on I went from work straight there and couldn't get my usual space and ended up jammed against the crush barrier. I then had to have 2 lots of crap ribs during my time on the Cop. So I've done my time.
All worth it.
People say nowadays I'm spoiled. I've got my own little room there. I say, yeah, but I'm entitled to this because I did my time.
Yeah, you've earned it.
Push it in the evening.
100%. So, can you tell us about how the role as the announcer at the club came about?
Yeah, I mean, going back before I started working there, when I first started going, there were no loudspeakers, no nothing. Once in a while, you get the Scottish pipe band to turn up and annoy everybody before the game. When we came up to the old First Division, I think the FA insisted we got the tannoy system in, and in those days it was one column of the old big speakers on the corner of the stand between the main stand and the Anfield Road end.
Yeah,
and it was great because if you stood the other end of the ground, you could just about hear it. And if you stood that end of the ground, you came home with blood coming out your ears because it was so loud. There was no finesse to it at all. Then, as soon as that happened, they got an announcer in, a DJ who played music before the game and at half time and whatever. The guy called Stuart Bateman was the first one. He was the one who introduced You Never Walk Alone in 1963.
Okay.
Couple of years after that, he retired, and a guy called Alan Jackson took over, who is now a resident on the Isle of Man. I think he's...
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
He went to the Isle of Man in late 1970 on a 6-month contract.
Okay.
To work on Manx Radio, because in those days he was trying to get into the radio industry.
Yeah.
And this was his foothold, and he said to the club, I believe, obviously I wasn't there then, look, I've got to take this job. It's my future at stake. I'll leave somebody in charge who can do the job, and I'll be back for the start of next season. The guy left in charge made an awful lot of bloomers. And one night in April 1971, I was at the match with my wife. This guy made a bloomer. And I said I was sort of touching and being a real old grouch. I said, this guy's embarrassing sometimes. And she looked at me and said, it's all very well for you standing down here.
Yeah.
You couldn't do any better. And I looked at her. I thought, that's a challenge. And for whatever reason, I went home. I got the old typewriter out, which is what you had in those days.
Yeah.
So a very long letter to the chief exec, Peter Robinson, which basically was an A4 side of paper that boiled down to, dear sir, gives a job. And apparently they were wondering what to do next because they were fed up with the guy too.
Okay.
And my letter landed on Peter's desk, and he thought, this guy sounds reasonably lucid. And they got me in just to see if I had 2 heads and have a chat.
Fantastic.
And decided to give me a trial.
Okay.
And in theory, the trial's still going on 49 years later. I've never actually been told, oh, you got the job now.
Really?
Still plodding away. And the sad thing was that the first match of that season, August the 14th, 1971, Alan Jackson turned up with a bag of records. He was back from the Isle of Man, and nobody had bothered to tell him that he'd been replaced, which was really embarrassing.
Yeah.
For me. But, I mean, apart from anything else, that was the last thing I needed. You can imagine how nervous I was doing that first day doing that.
Definitely, yeah.
I mean, I remember going up the stairs to the old gantry underneath the roof of the main stand, and I looked out at all these people and thought, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
I just froze for a moment, and then I thought, well, I've either got to go down those steps and get on with this, or go home and pack a suitcase and go abroad for a few years, because nobody will ever speak to me again. The family knew what was going on, the friends and whatever. So I gritted my teeth, and after that, it was all hunky-dory. I mean, the first day was terrifying, but having got through it, I was fine, and it's second nature now, obviously.
Yeah, but at the time, that must have been great knowing that you were obviously representing the club that you love and that you follow.
Yeah, I mean, I say the thing was, what I was saying, it was such a thrill just to go through the doors and the main stand. I mean, obviously, I started out as a young lad, like they do now, hanging around the players' entrance, seeing who was coming and going, getting the odd autograph, that sort of thing. And then all of a sudden, I'm part of the club. And even to this day, it still gives me a big buzz that
I can imagine.
I'm actually part of the Liverpool. I mean, Kenny Dalglish said I was part of the history and traditions of the club. And I said to my wife when I read that, I said, just take me outside and shoot me now, because it's not going to get any better than that. And I'll stick by that.
Yeah, definitely. So, obviously, you've got one of the best roles at the club going, really. You get the opportunity to carry on being a fan of the club. But in my opinion, you're also contributing a massive part to the results for the team over the years. You know, in my opinion, you've enhanced the atmosphere for match-going fans, and you can definitely tell that it helps the players on the pitch. Over the years, have you noticed when your role has made a massive impact on the pitch or in the stands?
Once or twice. Obviously, the certain games. I mean, around the Chelsea game in 2005, the semi-final, we got to Istanbul. During that spell, I'd built up a routine of European nights, just pumping up the volume and picking stuff to play that got the fans going, foot tapping stuff, tub thumping stuff, and generally turning the volume up. Just not so you're going to kill anybody, but just enough to make people have to shout and sing a lot louder. And it did the trick. It was all part of the preparation for the game. And then my favourite was obviously Barcelona. I mean, at the end of that, I was so pleased with myself that the atmosphere that night just grew and grew and grew. And then at the end, when I put on You Never Walk Alone, and the whole squad lined up in front of the Kop and just stayed there. And then it was weird, because when they'd finished, I was thinking, right, aren't you lot going home now? And nobody was moving. And I'd run out of music. I use a memory stick now to play. And that had just finished. Everything had been and gone. And then I looked on my desk, and there was Imagine by John Lennon. So I banged that on. And then the whole Kop took it up. And the rest of the stadium was still 3/4 full. And they just joined in. And that was the most magical moment.
Just felt fitting.
For a couple of days after that, I was getting messages from all over the world. I mean, my favourite was a guy in Australia. He said he was in Sydney Casino, early hours of the morning, watching the game on a big screen. And he said the place was full of all these big, hairy, muscular Australian sheep farmers. And he said they were in tears. They were in floods of tears singing Imagine. And I said, well, it doesn't get any better than that. I thought the other thing was that Piers Morgan called me a genius on Good Morning Britain, apparently. I don't like the guy, but
I was going to say. So something I was really keen to ask you. Is it difficult to have to compose yourself when a late goal goes in or something happens, in the dramatic games we've had at Anfield over the years? So, for example, like you touched on there, Origi's goal against Barcelona. Is it difficult to compose yourself in those moments, as naturally being a fan?
Yeah, it's very, very, I mean, I'm good at jumping out of my chair and banging on the desk and going yippee and then settling straight down again. I think experience over the years. I mean, the first week I was there in '71, we had a Tuesday night game against Wolves. I know when we scored the second goal that night, I banged on the desk, just sheer elation. And if you'd seen the state of my hand, my wife thought that I'd been in a fight when I got home. But you get used to it. I know people have said that once in a while I lose it. I think it was Olympiacos in 2005. You know when Stevie G scored the goal, got us back on the Golden Road. Somebody played me a recording of me announcing the goal, and I really had lost it. I was hysterical because I was just so upset about us, about getting knocked out of the Champions League after all that hassle.
Yeah.
And then we were back in it again. And again, they had the same season, the end of the Chelsea game. If you listen, there's a YouTube clip of You Never Walk Alone at the end of that game. On one of the clips, you can hear me announcing the 6 minutes added time. And then I paused. I mean, there was a pause between the fourth official holding his board up and me saying 6 minutes added time.
Yeah.
And I stopped and I sort of screwed my eyes and I looked. Does that say 6 minutes? Okay, and then I calmed down. On the mic, there'll be 6 minutes of added time. And on the YouTube video, you can see Rafa looking at his coach. He said, "What did George just say then?" And then further down, the blessed Jose Mourinho, my hero, he said, "Did he say 6 minutes?" And he's egging his players on. And then we got through the 6 minutes. And then I banged on You'll Never Walk Alone. And at the end of that, you can hear me giving a speech. It was like one of those wartime Nuremberg rallies when Hitler was barking at everybody. I'd lost it. I said, I've been coming here for all these years, and this is the best atmosphere ever in this place. And it was too. I just could get over it. I think what I do, I get into a state, and sometimes I'll come home here, and I come through the door, my wife will say, "Kettle on?" "Yes." "Cup of tea," and just settle into my chair, and then wait till my blood pressure gets back down to 3 figures.
Take it all back in.
And the day after a game nowadays, a big game like that, I'm always exhausted, just stressed out completely.
Feel like you've been playing yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do. I mean, sometimes I say that I feel worse than the players must do by now.
Yeah. So can you tell us now what the biggest difference you see now within your role from when you first started? Is there something that stands out?
Well, the two things. I mean, I realised when I've been writing this book of mine, which is coming out next May, all good bookstores, folks. When I first started, I was just playing background music, really, just to keep their ears occupied before a game.
Yeah.
Over the period of time, it's graduated to the state where I'm thinking about building an atmosphere. I'm deliberately picking and choosing tunes that build up the volume as we approach kickoff. Of course, the other big thing is that '94, when the stadium turned all seated, everything changed. People say, "Is the atmosphere as good as it was then?" And I say, well, yeah, but not for as long. I mean, when I first started, quite often, the crowd would be in, 2.5 hours before kickoff. Strangely late in the early 70s, when Leeds were the big rivals. I remember one day in particular, I got to Anfield about 12 o'clock for a 3 o'clock kickoff. And when I got inside, all the standing areas were full. And by the time kickoff came, I was shattered. I just slumped in my chair because of the sheer volume. But obviously, since 1994, all-seater, everybody coming to the game knows, when they're walking up the road there, they've got a piece of paper in their hand, and it says, "You're going to get in. You don't have to worry about it." Not only that, here's your spec. So if they get to Anfield, I don't know, 80% of the people who come will go in one of the pubs around or the hospitality areas inside the stadium.
Yeah.
Stay in the warm until it's nearly kick-off time. And then the last 10, 15 minutes before kick-off is when the atmosphere starts building, which is a lot later than it used to be. Once it gets going, all being well, it does get us loud. Obviously, we're back to the crowd sizes we had in the early 70s. I mean, the first season I was there, we had 56,000 in to watch Roger Hunt's testimonial. Nowadays, the capacity is 54,000, so we're nearing up. And of course, we've got so many more stewards and catering staff and whatever. There are actually more than 56,000 people in the stadium.
True.
Helps.
So, believe that you're going into your 50th season now in the role, which is an incredible achievement. And but I just wanted to ask, when you took on the role at the club, did you ever envisage that you'd have such a lengthy spell in the role?
Never crossed my mind. I remember at the end of my first season going into Peter Robinson's office after the last game and trying to, in a roundabout way, saying, I'm coming back in August.
Yeah.
And he made some flippant remark. Of course, you're part of the furniture now. But there was nothing concrete in it at all. It's and the years have gone on and on and on, and it's like waiting for the 30-year wait for the league title. A year goes by and another one goes by, and it sort of creeps up on you. And getting into the 50th season is just insane. I'd never ever have thought I'd live this long and see what I've seen and do what I've done and be where I've been. It's an absolutely surreal is the only word for it.
So one thing that I was really interested to get your thoughts on, so obviously you never walk alone being played. As a fan, I know there's never a time when I go to the match and it doesn't send shivers down my spine, but do you get the same feeling? Or has there ever been a time when you played it and you could feel it being more emotional and passionate in the ground?
Well, yeah, obviously big games, it's been like that. Then, the Hillsborough Memorials, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And one or two other occasions have been, I don't know, when, after Bill Shankly died and the same Bob Paisley, and one or two other occasions as time has gone on, but even now, even if I'm driving in the car and it comes on the radio, the hairs stand up on the back of my neck.
Yeah.
I shall never ever tire of listening to it. I'm thinking the most emotional one of recent years, about 4 years ago, I think 5 years, there was a dinner for the supporters in one of the lounges in the Kenny Dalglish stand. And I knew, but most people didn't in the room. Jerry was gigging in Manchester, Jerry Marsden, and he'd been invited to come, and he turned up quite late on when the dinner wasn't finished and all the speeches were finished. And he got up on the stage and he sang You Never Walk Alone. And I've never heard anything like his voice, still pitch perfect. And, the people in there were looking at him, just so privileged to be there and hear him do it live.
Yeah.
It was incredible. I mean, I've been lucky. I mean, I went round Norway a couple of times with Jerry, and he went round with the Legends team, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. And everywhere we went, the team would play against local legends or whatever. And Jerry would sing You Never Walk Alone live before the game. And then he'd do a concert in the town afterwards. And it was just such an experience just to get to know the guy. Obviously, going back to my youth, he was a hero. That I'm old enough to have been in the Merseybeat era when there was Jerry, Jerry and the Pacemakers, the Beatles, the Undertakers, the Searchers, people like that. And if only we'd known, where we're all going to end up.
Where we are now.
I was talking to a guy on another podcast this afternoon. I was talking to him about the film they made about Bill Shankly about 4 or 5 years ago, Shankly Nature's Fire. Yeah, I presume you've seen it. It's been on TV a couple of times.
Yeah.
But I went to the premiere of that at the Philharmonic Hall in Liverpool with my son. And it was an incredible experience just to see myself on the big screen. That's weird. But then I was saying afterwards that 50 odd years previously, I'd been sat in the Philharmonic Hall at school speech day, listening to the headmaster giving his talk and whatever. And sitting a few rows back was Paul McCartney.
Wow.
Another few rows further back, George Harrison, people like that.
Yeah.
And if somebody had said then where we were all going to end up all these years later, said you've been on drugs, really, and here we are. It made a really, really strong point to me that everybody starts off from somewhere. That's why I'm very keen to play Liverpool local musicians who've got new songs out, because I know that's what happens. These guys, they're starting out. Another 10 years they could be superstars, or cleaning the toilet somewhere. But they need a push. They need exposure.
Yeah,
and, they were the classic case. So it was just absolutely crazy the way the city was then.
Yeah, like you say, people just need the platform and the opportunity, don't they? I suppose that's where a lot of famous people from Liverpool have come from. And Liverpool is a sort of city where people get behind their own, don't they, and show that passion. So finally, the podcast is centered around Going the Match. So with every podcast we're doing, I want to end by asking, what are your top 3 favourite matches you've been at? So it doesn't have to be based on the 90 minutes itself, but it can be based on something that happened during the day for whatever reason. So, I mean, you've definitely seen your fair share.
Yeah, I'm thinking there's a couple that spring to mind. The obvious one, Saint Etienne, but I think that's probably my 4th favourite. Before I started working there, we had a game against Munich 1860, or the other team in Munich apart from Bayern, and we beat them 8-0 in the Cup Winners' Cup. And it was such an amazing display of football. People say, oh, they must have been rubbish. They weren't that night. I've never seen Liverpool so much on song. I mean, Munich beat us 2-1 in the second leg, so there weren't any slouches. Then, the Chelsea game in 2005 I was talking about before.
Iconic.
Not just because of the result, but because of what it meant historically. And I was at the Heysel Stadium, and I promised my lad, who was only 12 at the time, that the next time Liverpool got to a European Cup final, we'd go. Because he was too young. And then, of course, the disaster happened. We were banned out of Europe, and I thought we'd never get there again. I really genuinely thought Liverpool would never get to another European final.
Yeah.
I thought it'd kill us. So the fact we got through to the final in Istanbul meant so much to me personally.
Yeah.
Was amazing. Obviously, the way it happened, the 1-0, the dodgy goal. I still don't think the goal went over the line. But
I hope not.
We deserve to get through against that shower.
Definitely.
And then, of course, Barcelona last year, still the most amazing night ever. I mean, the way it all fell out. If you'd written it as a film for TV, people would say it was too far-fetched, it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well, it was. I mean, Barcelona coming to our place, we're 3-0 down. They're the best team on the planet. They've got Messi and Suarez and the whole shooting match. We had 2 of our star players crocked. We had no chance. absolutely no chance. And a lot of people just turned up that night, I think, just to enjoy the football and see, how it went on. And then Divock scores, and you think, 3-1, okay. At half-time, we're still only 1-0 to us. And you think, well, never mind. And then right after half-time, Genie scores 2 goals. And then we're looking at each other, 3-3. No away goals to worry about. No nothing. Then that corner, I can still see it in my mind's eye now that, the way it went, to corner to us, the ball boy, who actually, I don't even know if you realise, the ball boy who threw the ball to Trent that night, he's actually on Liverpool's books. His name's Oakley Cannonier.
Oh, right, okay.
He's got a great future as a striker. His reactions are spot on. When I watched the ball, I saw Trent put it down and walk away. And then, all of a sudden, he's back. He's kicking the ball in the direction of the goal. And nobody's moving. Everybody except Divock Origi were just standing around, waiting for the referee to blow his whistle. And then the ball's in the back of the net. And I didn't announce the scorer for a while because I thought he's going to disallow this. He's going to say,
yeah, there's got to be something.
And then all of a sudden, no, he's given it. And we're winning. I'm lucky to watch it. Well, we've got this, 20 minutes odd to survive. And if Barcelona, just sneak one dodgy goal, we're out because they'll have the away goal and we won't. But they didn't. And then at the end of the game, again, the referee blew the final whistle. And nobody seemed to realise it was in the corner underneath my window, and the player suddenly stopped. And then what seemed like 5 minutes is obviously about 10 seconds, and all of a sudden everybody jumping up and down, and we're through. And it was just unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. And then I was telling you earlier, all this business about playing, Never Walk Alone with the squad joining in, and then Imagine, and then going home buzzing, absolutely buzzing. It was just amazing. It just doesn't get any better than that.
It doesn't. So I don't think there's a better way to end the podcast than talking about Liverpool's biggest and best Champions League night. So just before you go, George, I just want to say a massive thank you for giving up your time today and coming on. I really appreciate it. If you haven't already, please subscribe, follow and share, and of course, leave a 5-star rating.